speech. I call the member for Deakin.
Well, thanks very much, Mr Deputy Speaker. I rise again today to draw attention to this House of an issue that's of great concern in my electorate of Deakin. The basic freedom that we all take for granted, the right to walk among our streets freely and without fear of harm, and the fact that for some people that is feeling like it's under threat. When I raised this matter in the House earlier this year, what prompted me to do so was the tragic death of local school student Masa Vukotic, who was fatally stabbed in a suburban park, and the resulting concern that this raised about public safety in our area. This attack didn't take place in a strange area distant from the victim, but rather just a few hundred metres from her home on the Koonung Reserve, just near the border of the Deakin electorate. In this instance, the accused was recently released from prison for other serious charges, when it's now abundantly clear that he should have still been behind bars. Sadly, this is too late now for the victim. And of course it was too late for another victim that none of us will forget, and that is Jill Meagher, who was murdered just a few short years ago at the hands of an offender who at the time was serving parole for multiple heinous and violent crimes against women. Our society can't accept the slap on the wrist mentality of our judiciary with sentencing any longer. Enough is enough. We owe it to these and other victims to do better. Because regrettably, over the last few years, this problem is getting worse, not better, particularly violence against women. It's terribly upsetting to say that we know of at least 47 Australian women who've died as a result of some form of violence this year. 47 Australian women. This is why I've repeatedly called on all jurisdictions around Australia to look into introducing mandatory minimum sentences for acts of violence against women and children with set periods of non-parole. Because far too often, the violent perpetrators of this violence are a known quantity, but sufficient action is not taken before the ultimate fateful consequences. In my view, the time has long passed that activist judges and unelected parole boards be entrusted with keeping violent offenders off our streets. They've proven themselves incapable of that task, and this situation cannot be allowed to continue. Serious action must be taken now. Unfortunately, in my home state of Victoria, things seem to be moving in the wrong direction on this front. Recently, a Victorian magistrate made the decision to release on a community corrections order a well-publicised case of Koda Taha, an individual convicted of assault with a weapon, assault, criminal damage, stalking, making threats to kill, multiple counts of using communications services to threaten harm, harass and intimidate, and possessing prohibited weapons. In particular, one of the assault charges related to an attack on his own 67-year-old mother. This sentence is way out of line with community expectations and just further undermines public trust in our judicial system. I've therefore written to the Victorian Attorney-General expressing my absolute disgust that the magistrate in that case would let the offender walk out of court with a community corrections order. I've asked the Victorian Attorney-General to ensure the DPP appeal against this sentence as being manifestly inadequate. We know that Jill Meagher's killer was out on the streets thanks to an activist judge and weak parole policies of the former Labor Attorney-General of Victoria, Rob Hulls. So I urge the new Victorian Attorney-General to chart a new course and not follow the previous views of Labor governments in Victoria. It's about time that the rights of violent criminals are no longer placed above the rights of decent people who just want to go about their daily lives in safety. So I once again call on all jurisdictions to look at legislating for mandatory minimum sentences for crimes involving violence against women and children, because we must act now. The stalking must stop before tragedy strikes again. Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker.
Thank you. I call the